Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on innovation with data cloud architecture. Our guest is Chris Malekar. Chris is the Senior Director of Technology and Innovation at Northmark. Chris is a technologist, an innovation practitioner, and a leader of digital transformation. When I met Chris, he talked a lot about tech that drives outcomes and business scales. That's when I knew we needed to have him in this discussion so he can share some of his perspectives and mindset on innovation. Our discussion is moderated by Lou Strahan. Lou is one of the organizers of Digital Transformation Leadership on meetup.com. You can find a link to that group in our video description. We hope you enjoy this discussion and share your thoughts as comments on this video. I pass this on to Lou now. Lou, you're on.
I appreciate the warm intro and wanted to really keep this more conversational in nature. Chris, of course, is bringing all the answers to any questions we might have, but we're just going to keep these questions to a limited few. Chris, let me just start off by saying, first, welcome to the meetup. Thanks for joining. And I'd certainly like to know a little bit about you, maybe what you're doing in your role and what sort of problems you're trying to solve.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David and Lou, for inviting me for this podcast. It is absolute my pleasure and honor to be here. To start with, Lou, as you said, every single solution starts with a problem statement, right? So first thing first, let me elaborate a little bit more on the problem statement. If you will, imagine we had a huge tech debt in our existing landscape. Before we could even imagine of rolling out digital transformation, we had to first understand and completely get a grip on the as-is state of our IT landscape. And once we are able to do that, we applied something called as the value stream mapping. And that value stream mapping gave us that entire picture of what are the gaps, what are the tech debts, and what are the red flags we identified in our IT landscape. And once we were able to identify our, the problem statement, the next biggest challenge which we faced was how to prioritize and how to gauge the complexities of these problem statements. Right? And there are so many conflicting priorities, and the complexities can vary from a simple change management to a very complex architecture. So the value stream mapping really helped us to get to the core. What is the core problem statement we're trying to solve? And in Northmark, it was all about data, right? And once we identified data, we said the data is so dispersed across multiple siloed applications, systems, and platforms. And the as-is process gave us those insights to first attack on the data piece, which can help us build the foundational layer to design our solution strategy. And just to name the few, what we came up with the technology stack, it was we selected. Now there are a plethora of different platforms and solutions out there. And we did, after a careful evaluation, we came up with Azure for the ETL using the Azure Data Factory. Then we used the Azure Data Lake Solutions, aka ADLS. We are using Snowflake for our data warehousing. We are using Azure APIs, though we have a vision to use MuleSoft as we go along this journey and try to mature that API platform strategy. But for now, we have decided to go ahead with the Azure API platform for the API integrations. And finally, we have Tableau or Power BI. We have not yet made a decision on an analytics engine tool, but we will be using Tableau or Power BI as our analytics engine.
Well, that's certainly a mouthful, Chris. I appreciate that you've sort of spelled out what you've purchased, what you've done, what you're considering, because that's certainly on the top of minds of a lot of our listeners. I guess maybe let's kind of go into a little bit about that tech stack and really the things that maybe you didn't have on board before the beginning of this journey. what were the skills that you had to review and look at to be able to solve the problem?
Absolutely. That's a really a very great and an important question to, and that we need to answer before even we embark on this journey, right? The first one was the experienced technology leaders. Now, what I really mean is by that, who has done this, seen that. Someone who understands the technology, but also brings a good blend of business knowledge, right? Which helps us on a long run to convert those business use cases into solutions, which are very well thought through and have a sustainable mileage. I'll again repeat that word, sustainable mileage, not something which is built in a vacuum like a point solution, but a very holistic, non-monolithic solution. Now, that was the number one. That is the experienced technology leaders. Now, second is the data experts, right? Because we identify data is a big pain point for us. Data experts, if you will, you can name it as architects, engineers, or data fellow engineers. Someone who knows how to convert these non-value data into meaningful insights, which was kind of like which can be easily consumed by our business and the end users to take or make informed decisions. So again, the second was the data experts. Third one, we call those the innovators, right? One who likes to break the status quo and challenge the existing setup and process and very creatively disrupts the existing landscape. Someone who knows how to convert those technical solutions into business success stories, and someone who knows how to connect the dots and present the value it brings to the business and industry, right? So to reiterate, we had the experienced technology leaders, we had the data experts, now the innovators. And finally, I would say this might not be a skill, but this skill should be at all the levels. If you look at the pyramid, we have the top layers, layer where we have the CXOs and the C-suite sitting, the mid-level managers, the directors, and finally the boots on the ground, those engineers. But this trait, which I'm talking about, the last one, the skills, somebody who has that mindset to fail fast, learn fast. You can call it 0 to 1, Z to 1 strategy, lab to market strategy, but someone who has that appetite to fail fast and learn fast, who is not scared and scared about taking risk. So to summarize, experienced leadership, data expert, innovators, and early adopters is what are the skill sets we really look forward when we try to do any this form or size of disruption.
That's a great response, Chris. I guess just a slight follow-on to that particular story. How much of those skills did you have in-house, and how much did you have to train or secure from outside, or maybe even
That
augment?
is absolutely. So I think so. I was like maybe in the challenges area we could have covered, but as you're asking this question right away, the gaps what we identified is to build that A team, what I call it. We had now. This is what I learned in my MBA, right? We can either build, buy, or ally. Yeah. So you need to very carefully do the analysis in-house. What are my strengths and my weaknesses? In a very simplistic term, SWOT analysis, and identify the gaps. And if you do not have, don't try to build that. You can go ahead and buy. That means you need to partner with strategic vendors who have done this before, who have experience, and who exactly knows what are the pitfalls and can protect me, my company, my organization, and the most important, my dollars from getting wasted. So I cannot really emphasize how important it is to partner. You will, if you will, you can think about this as divide and conquer or divide and win. And this is what I can tell you, that partnering with strategic vendors is a pretty key to build that skill sets in-house.
Excellent. And I know that was a transition type question. So let's go ahead and get across that chasm into the transition. Tell me a little bit more about some challenges that you've experienced in this journey so far.
Absolutely. I think so that we have a list, but maybe I can highlight on the ones which really matters a lot. One is the holistic approach, right? As I said, our biggest challenge with data was how everything was built in siloed applications, systems, platforms, and that creates such a lot of technical, technological mess, I would say, in which you try to fix what is already broken, or do you really want to start fresh, right? This is I always give this example of Legos or puzzle, right? You have all the pieces of the puzzle or all of the pieces of the Legos. Unless you bring that all together in a very structured format, you don't see the end results and goals there. So it's very important to have that holistic approach and that holistic view to a problem statement and the solution. Second one is, I would say it is a massive thing, and it might be a common thing which we have been facing or encountering for generations. That is change management. As wisely said by somebody, culture eats strategy at breakfast. No kidding. I can tell you how true that it is. If we do not have the sensitivity and the right empathy to our company culture, any change can bite us back in a big way. Yeah, having change champions and building those allies I just mentioned a few minutes ago into the business is of paramount importance to successfully bring a transformation. And then, as I mentioned, the A team, if you're missing the A team, maybe you're hitting around the bush and you might go into circles and circles and not come to a conclusion where you know your exact roadmap and your strategy with next steps. Finally, I think so. This is not a challenge in every industry and an organization, but a very important thing to take into consideration and have it hashed out before even we embark on this journey is the leadership buy-in. If you do not have the leadership buy-in, you can you cannot you might have just fancy slides, but not the right sponsors and the dollars which are required to execute this strategy. So to summarize again, and I did cover in my previous topic which you just said about, that was the key partnership, right? Build versus buy analysis to identify the vendors we need to partner with them. These key partners can tremendously help us catapult our journey to take that big leap into unknown terrains. So those would be my key challenges, which I would like to emphasize on.
Chris, just a follow up there. You mentioned in one of your responses that it was going round and round, and
Yeah.
change management is certainly one. Do you have any examples where, at least on your journey so far, or maybe looking into the future, you see that you're going to get to revisit things a few times? And any advice for our listeners on how you stay the course but keep that feedback going?
Yes, absolutely. So coming back to that going in circles, which I mentioned, right? And that comes back to my holistic approach, right? You really need to look at your entire landscape in totality, build that as a journey map, and identify who are your key players in that whole journey. If you, as I mentioned, one side is your A team, which I talk about the technology side, on the IT side, or your engineering, if you will. But if you do not have the right partners in the business functions who can be your trusted advocates, you would go in circles, right? That means you have a brilliant idea, you have a brilliant strategy, but if there is no buy-ins, I don't know what are you trying to solve, and what unmet needs are you trying to, resolve for your customer. So, in a nutshell, I can say that the holistic approach and looking at a problem statement in totality is of great importance.
Excellent. Thanks. I know that was a bit off script, but I wanted to kind of throw that out and just understand where your going in circles was. I think all of us who've been through these journeys have certainly had that.
Yep.
You specifically pointed out the A team, the secured business partners, and others. Uh, Have you experienced any turnover in any of your teams along this journey, or do you see that coming? Because it's rare to be able to get everybody rowing the boat at the same time and not having that to experience. And how would you overcome that?
Right. So they say, right, you need to walk the talk. Yeah. So you gain that by experience, and then you very soon learn where you need to put your to get the maximum bang for your buck. You need to strategically invest your time, and your strategy to should be shared with the right players. Now, again, not to underestimate, you might have some underdogs sitting somewhere, but who can see the potential value in what you're doing. So you definitely need to socialize that with your entire organization, but not to forget who are the key players who can either make or break that strategy, right? So identifying your champions, again, I cannot really stop emphasizing on that point, like how important it is to identify your business champions who can drive and be that advocate for you to bring that change and the transformation in the business.
Excellent. Great response. Maybe we can switch gears now. We've talked about a little bit of the journey that we've experienced so far. Let's look
Yeah.
into the future. So in a customer experience, common tool is a reflection tool called Remember the Future. Typically, this takes the
Yeah.
form of a maybe a postcard. If you were writing a
Right.
postcard to yourself or to your boss or to your team, what would that look like if you wrote it 6 months from now for your audience today?
Absolutely. That's a really a brilliant question. That analogy which you gave, right? So that is so true. This postcards is my most favorite things because this is where I call them the golden nuggets, right? And I would say the three things which I can really look as from a future perspective is going to be scale, growth, and innovate, right? Now, when I talk about scale, what I really mean there is now we have built the foundation layer. Yeah. How soon can I scale that and start reaping the benefits, right? You had your quick wins, but now how can I make that quick wins as a kind of a thing of a past and then embark on a journey where you're trying to capitalize on bigger things, right? And that comes by the game of numbers. You need to scale that and try to take the full potential of this. If you will, I will give an example now. By building this architecture of all the technology stack I mentioned before, you have a Ferrari in front of you. You don't want to take the Ferrari to buy grocery. You want to put that Ferrari on a racetrack, right? So I would say that how soon you can scale. Second thing is growth. Now, this is where I tell about how we need to start to shift our gears from a pure productivity play to a growth initiatives, which means how we can start to elevate our IT as being a pure support function to a function which can contribute to our company's P&L. And that is a massive mindset shift where most of the IT teams miss to capitalize on because the moment you get and have a skin in the game on the P&L side, guess what? Everybody's listening to you. And the third one is innovate. That and that being my favorite thing. Again, I just want to say this: innovation is a mindset. I would say it's a muscle which has to be developed by practicing more and more. And I can tell you, I can give a few examples about innovation. That is, it's not something which is taught, but you just simply have to do it more and more. A classic example: I go, I come to office, I go back home, I take a route. Now, how can I optimize my cycle time or the commute time by taking a different route, by finding the different alternatives which are available out there, right? So when it comes to innovate, like you say that you came, you saw, and you conquered. The 5S, which I always use from a Six Sigma lean principle: set, sort, shine, standardize, and sustain, is an example. But now it's the time to disrupt your boilerplate and re-innovate your framework and models which you have built. Which means I always give this example from like the companies like Amazon and Apple. They create a framework and a model, and they just like a cookie cutter, they don't keep just using that. As Jeff Bezos from Amazon, in one of his town hall, he said, Amazon is going bankrupt. And guess what? For a few seconds, the stock went down. Okay, and he said that there is another company which is coming out, which is going to disrupt our business. And he really meant his own company, Amazon. Right. So he said the messaging was pretty strong there, that unless and until you do not disrupt your own framework, models, go to market strategies, products, there is somebody else sitting around the corner who's absolutely ready to do that and who's going to eat up your business at a blink of an eye. So to summarize that, scale, growth, and innovate are my three postcard themes I would see after 3 to 6 months down the line.
Those are great. I think it's spot on to kind of where you find yourself, and hopefully where you find yourself in 6 months. Um, you've got a title of Senior Director of Innovation. We're talking about innovation as one of the things that will be there in 6 months, but it's happening today. It's happening now. Is there anything that you're doing boots on the ground now that you want to share with our listeners about innovation and having a job title that has innovation in it?
Right. Sure. So the first thing to start with this job title of Senior Director of Technology and Innovation. So technology is a piece, right, which you use that as your channel to disrupt that market. But innovation and idea can come from anywhere, right? So the first good thing what Northmark has done even before I could join was they have created this innovation council where all the leaders, they come to the table, we meet once a quarter, and they bring all the ideas what they have either heard from their competitors, or maybe on a golf course they have heard from one of their peers who are working for our competitors. So they bring everything to a table. Now it's my job to take that idea, nurture them, and take it to a new level, Lou, if you can think of. Because if I'm doing exactly the same thing, what is innovation in that? There's nothing. But I want to take that idea, disrupt, and bring and elevate that to a new level where leaders should be really amazed to see that what we have done with that simple idea. Just to give you a quick example, in one of our innovation councils, one of the presidents from investment sales, he brought this concept of, we are doing pretty well in the debt side, but in the equity side, we need some help. And what really he meant by that is to, how can I identify the investors out there who has the equity, and how can I reach them before somebody else reach? Now, this was done in a very brute force method. You look at some catalog, you look at some other areas, you call them, but there was no way they were able to identify, and there was no one common database where they can look at the entire list of venture capitalists and investors, right? So with that said, now we have built this database, this entire data warehouse, which they can capitalize on and use that particular data points to their advantage and grow our equity side of business, which I really mean, that's a classic example of how we are contributing to our P&L and not just doing a productivity play.
That is outstanding. I have to say, it's a strong tie back to your original business goals. You said it earlier in the conversation, tie things back and hit that P&L. If that one piece come out of your role and your team and your organization helping to transform that company, that's certainly amazing. I know you certainly have a lot of stakeholders at the table to make that happen, but hats off to you. That's a big kudos. I'm sure that Northmark's looking for many more in the innovation side, and I have to say, it's very difficult for any business to really get a mature innovation culture inside their organization. So best of luck to you in that particular space. That's going to be a hard journey going forward.
Thank you.
Let me kind of change gears again. I know we're looking in the future. We've seen the rearview mirror, but if you were to look at perhaps your head of operations, your the people who are making things run in the business as usual space, once this solution is in place and your future users are using this and they're doing things day in and day out, what will they do that really demonstrates return on investment to your project sponsors and executives?
Absolutely. Now, this is a very brilliant question. I think every single initiative which we take should have a ROI success story. And there's a new gig now outside in Silicon Valley. They're no more interested in ROI. They call it IRR, internal rate of return, right? So it all boils down to the same thing. What is your success criteria, right? As I mentioned in the beginning, the as is journey maps helps us to baseline ourselves. The number one very important element which many leaders, I really respectfully say that, many leaders miss on is to baseline where do you stand today? If you do not know where do you stand today, how are you going to gauge where are you going to be tomorrow after you implement this new strategy, this new technology? You say it, whatever transformational elements we are bringing to the table, you need to able to gauge that. But in this particular scenario of data, which we are trying to solve the data strategy by taking that data on a cloud, and is going to be the data analytics, right? Like being one of the biggest win from this data strategy, which will help our project sponsors to see and view existing data in a way which they have not seen before, right? So data analytics is what I say, translate that raw data or content into something which is very meaningful for our stakeholders, which they can leverage that data to make decisions either to grow, scale, or to innovate. And second thing, I think so we all know about it, and this is where I struggle. And my son was asking just a few days ago, that is the AI, artificial intelligence. He says, Dad, what is artificial intelligence? Can you explain to me? And then I said, okay, oh my God, he's a 10-year-old. How can I explain him artificial intelligence, right? So I said, after a few thoughts, I said, son, do you play a particular game on your laptop and on the iPad? Do you recall, or can you by any remote chance guess what is the software or that application I'm talking about? After a few minutes of guessing, he couldn't come up with. And I said, chess. Chess was the number one artificial intelligence application developed and rolled out 2 decades ago, right? And we are still on that journey of leveraging artificial intelligence. So I would say that artificial intelligence can be of such a massive help, but we cannot do artificial intelligence without having that core data or the data which we are trying to capitalize on. So having that foundational data is so important. And once that data piece is ready, then we can implement AI to forecast and predict the buying patterns of our customers. We can predict what are the geographic elements which can help us to penetrate into certain markets and exit into certain markets. Do I have to go after each customer? Even this customer is a right customer for me? If not, why am I spending my time, energy? And even after, let's say, we celebrate the win, I might have to lose so much of dollars on those particular opportunities and leads and accounts, right? So artificial, I can keep going on and on because that is one of my favorite topic, and we want to make sure we get and try to minimize that journey towards implementing AI by first creating that foundational data layer, which we are already on the journey and partnered with very key strategic partners. To name the few, we have Mode Stack here from David's team. We have Sense Corp, and we have the internal team as well, who is contributing towards that one common goal and vision, which is our digital data strategy.
I have to say that's a heck of a response. and it's going to resonate. I thoroughly believe it will resonate, and I want to personally thank you for all your time today. I think I'm going to pass the baton over to our friend David, and perhaps he can kind of give us a bit more perspective.
Thanks, Lou. Chris, thank you for sharing your innovation journey at Northmark. In this discussion, we heard Chris start by defining the problem, then building a talented team that can articulate and craft the technology innovation roadmap. Once technology delivers on quick wins to show business value, tech innovation is about moving from an operation and support function to be a growth and scale factor for the business. All of this is measured by ROI. Now, that is truly outcome-driven innovation. If you like this discussion, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you can stay tuned for more of these conversations with outcome-driven digital leaders. Thanks for watching.